Right. Thank you so much, Elise. Urban acupuncture. Now that is a nice thought, isn't it? What we have got next is a panel with Carlota, Sanz, co-founder of the Doughnut Economics, and the Maire of Lyon, Grégory, Doucet. If you can please join me on stage. Hello and welcome to Change Now.
Hello.
Your first time or you're back again?
Back again.
Back
Second
again.
time.
And what about you, Gregory?
That's my first time here.
First time.
Not in Paris, I mean, but for...
Not in Paris, but for experiencing Change Now and all the amazing change makers that we gather in this room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a short introduction to who these people are, and then we're going to dive straight into a conversation. So, Carlota, you believe in making regenerative economics accessible to all. You worked for a decade within the financial sector, and you looked then for alternative ideas at the Schumacher College, where you studied economic transformation whilst being the co-director of economy for the common good in the UK. Timely meeting with economist Kate Raworth, who published her economic model fit for the 21st century, known as the Doughnut Economics, led them to co-found the Doughnut Economic Action Lab. If Doughnut Economics was the theory, Doughnut Economics Action Labs was the way to bring the economics to life. So you're a strategic lead at Deal, and your work now focuses on enabling the concepts of Doughnut Economics to be turned into practice, whilst also enabling its spread with integrity. Welcome to Carlota.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so, Gregory, thank you so much for joining us today. You very much believe that transforming our urban economies need unity, collaboration, and a little dose of imagination. Inspired by the work of Gandhi, he became an environmental activist aged 16 and went on to spend almost 20 years in humanitarian work. As Director of Operations in West Africa, he led teams serving vulnerable populations across 10 countries, particularly around the Sahel region, before entering the world of politics. As an active member of Europe Écologie Les Verts, the French Green Party, he co-organized the Lyon Climate March and issued a call to unite all of Lyon's environmentalists to change Lyon, ou Change Lyon, 2020, when he won the municipal elections and was elected Maire of Lyon. So social, sustainability, and society run very deep, and you're here today to share with us how one pioneering city is reimagining city life. So please welcome Mr. Doucet. Now, we're going to talk about what pioneering cities are doing today to reimagine their urban futures. And there is a common thread that we see with these cities that follow the Doughnut Economics ideas. And so just in case anybody here hasn't come across the Doughnut Economics theory, Carlota, would you be able to give us a speed tour of what Doughnut Economics is, and especially that relevance and how it interplays with Deal?
Absolutely, I'm going to try. Right, so it makes sense that we actually start by the doughnut, which is the concept that lies at the very heart of Doughnut Economics and of Doughnut Economics Action Lab. So very brief for those that don't or haven't seen it yet, we can think of it as a compass to guide humanity in the 21st century, where the aim is that no one is falling short of the essentials of life. So no one should be falling short on food, water, education, energy, a home, etc. So the idea is that everyone in the world, it's meeting their needs, and it's living above that social foundation that we see there, while at the same time, and this is a big we cannot overshoot the ecological ceiling. And the ecological ceiling is made out of 9 planetary boundaries, which are the boundaries that keep this Earth a sweet home for everyone and for all the species living in it. So the idea is that we can not overshoot the ceiling. So we need to be living inside the sweet safe and just space that the Doughnut brings. And so the immediate question then is, how do we get there? How do we get inside the Doughnut? So that's the question that drives my work for sure. And Doughnut economics is a set of principles that helps us think how to get there. I'm going to talk very briefly about two of them because I think they're fundamental. Without them, we won't make it. We need to leave behind our extractive and linear industrial system, which that's the one, that, like the linear taking Earth's materials, making them into stuff, continuously using for a while and then throwing them away. That's exactly what's pushing us out of planetary boundaries. We need to turn it around and create a system that is regenerative by design. So a system that is living and working with and within the cycles of the living world. And this means that we're, of course, going to be relying only on green and renewable energy, but also we're going to be using our resources much more carefully, much more creatively, much more collectively. So that's the first one, regenerative by design. And the second one, which sometimes we tend to forget, and without it we won't make it either, we need to create economies that are distributive by design. So we've inherited economies that centralize power and wealth and opportunity in the hands of the very few. And we need economies that distribute this power, these opportunities and wealth in the hands of many more. So we need economies that are distributed by design. So that's a brief explanation of some of the concepts of Doughnut economics. My brilliant colleague, Kate Rayworth, explained it beautifully in her book. And yeah, so I definitely encourage you to read it. And when I met her, I think that what was clear is that the ideas were very much ready to jump off the page. We observed that many people, many change makers across so many areas wanted to bring these ideas into practice. They were already doing it, in fact, and so we thought, well, how can we create an organization that enables and supports these practitioners that want to take the theory to the practice? And we created Doughnut Economics Action Lab. We say that the name is very intentional. It is about creating action out of ideas. And we're doing it in the spirit of experimentation because we haven't done this before. So we want to really learn with the practitioners, with the pioneers that are putting this into practice, what would it mean to create economies that indeed are regenerative and distributive by design?
Thank you. That is not an easy thing to summarize a book in 2 minutes. I think Carlota did a great job. Grégory, I'm going to come to you, but maybe let's ask the audience first. Who here, show of hands, has been to Lyon? Wow, very good, very good. So for those unhappy people, like even myself, that have not been to Lyon, can you give us a sense of what your city is like, what it's like to live there and work there, and whether you have ever taken inspiration from the Doughnut economics ideas?
So hopefully a Doughnut practitioner. But aside from that, Lyon is the third most populated city in France, famous, of course, for its gastronomy, famous for its 2,000 years UNESCO in heritage, famous for hosting two of the most beautiful rivers in the country, but also probably less famous for being one of the most affected cities by climate change. That's the reason why we have a very high conscience of the necessity to act on the climate change consequences on the city. And that's also the reason why I have engaged with all, of course, my executive, the city into, let's say, high-level engagement, which is we want to be carbon neutral by the year 2030. We won't make it alone. And to reach that goal, we have engaged the city in a European Commission mission of our program, which is called 100 Climate Neutral and Smart Cities by 2030. So hopefully we are actually supported by the European Commission to reach that goal. But let's say that as a mayor and with all the action that we are implementing on the territory of Lyon, we are only responsible for 5% of the carbon emission. So we need to mobilize the rest of the stakeholders of the city, including, of course, citizens, to reach that goal. So 95% of the emission needs to be lessened by companies, associations, and citizens. So that's, for us, a very big challenge that we have started to actually overcome.
And just to pick up on that point, when you say that you are most at risk, can you give us a sense of how that's come about? Is that because of a risk report, or is that because people are feeling the effects of the actual heat waves?
We actually feel the change already for a couple of years, actually. Last summer, we have experienced heat waves of 12 days with more than 40 degrees during daytime. And during nighttime, the temperature remained above 25 degrees. Meaning to say that with this kind of temperature, you can't sleep properly, you can't actually work or do sport or just live normally. So we already see what's happening let's say, in our environment. We feel it with our body. So that, I believe, gave us probably a higher conscious of the necessity to act, and to act quickly.
So if I just carry on that flow, what was your starting point to act? Because like you say, you're having to mobilize 95% of everybody else beyond, and so that's got you. Where do you start, and what has been some of the tools that you've brought in to be able to do that?
Mobilizing people is actually key. So of course, if I just pretend that I will save the city or the world by myself, nobody will probably be confident enough to follow us. So we need to just first explain the goal and say that this is not a city goal. I mean, this is not only the goal for the city hall, but that's a goal that must be carried on by everybody. And what's at the same time surprising, but also very enthusiastic, is that once we have declared that we want to reach that carbon neutrality by 2030, I mean, we receive a very large enthusiasm from, for instance, from universities. I mean, all the university system in Lyon is actually committed to reach carbon neutrality by 2030. And then companies, including bankers, including transportation companies, including construction companies as well, willing to be also committed, willing to commit. So let's say one of the key factor of success for me, for sure, is to create common goals. It's to identify what we have in common. To a certain extent, I would say that this is exactly what we are experiencing here today, right now. I mean, this ChangeNOW summit is actually about, let's say, gathering people who have maybe different backgrounds, maybe different engagements, but with, let's say, common goals. And this is key for me. So this is what we are actually doing in Lyon as far as carbon neutrality is concerned.
And so, Carlota, if I can come back to you, because you're working on a global level, and not just cities, but today obviously we're looking at cities specifically. And to pick up on this point of goals, I guess what the Doughnut Economics Action Lab helps cities do is identify those goals. I believe your first city was Amsterdam. It was very famous in the press. That's certainly where I became more aware of it. Can you give us a sense of some of the tools and techniques that cities are using to be able to redefine their?
Sure. So just firstly to recognize that since the Doughnut was published, like a lot of the energy or the interest that was coming was how do we use this tool, which is a global concept, so it speaks about our planetary home, to explore what would it mean to live in thriving people and thriving balance within our locality. So one of the first things that we did at Deal was actually to create a framework that allowed to take this global concept to a particular place, and that's probably the starting point of all the places, not only cities, but many different regions that have started exploring the Doughnut. And it basically opens up the question of what would it mean to create cities that are a home for thriving people in a thriving natural habitat. So a lot of like looking into the local aspirations from a social and ecological perspective, but with the global responsibilities in mind. So how can this be a thriving home for thriving nature and people within the limits of the living planet and taking into account the well-being of all people? And that's a very ambitious question that cities that have come to us are exploring very courageously. And they've done it in many different ways. So Amsterdam was the first city indeed very publicly saying, we're going to use the Doughnut. They did it, and they used this framework for cities to help them redefine their circular strategy. So they rethought their circular strategy, taking into account not only the ecological, but the social ambitions. And since then, what we saw is that a lot of other cities, other mayors, other city councils started to reach out. And it's been really incredible to see that power of peer-to-peer inspiration, like how some mayors inspire other mayors. You know, that was incredible to see. And over the past years, we've got more than 80 local governments engaging with the concepts in different ways. And I think that's a key point. We've made it particularly open so that any place, any region, any city government can approach these ideas from where they are. And I think that means that there's not that many commonalities in the sense that there's very different entry points. And so different cities are using it maybe a lot, for sure a lot, to help them design data indicators, so new ways of measuring progress, but also as a guiding framework to set goals. So how do we create collective strategies within a city? That's what they've been telling us, that it's very useful because it brings a holistic picture of what that goal could be. But also some of the cities that are even going further, they're really embedding them or embedding these principles in all of the decision-making processes. I think that's what it became when it becomes really, really interesting. And maybe just to close here, a few cities. So of course, Amsterdam, Glasgow has been really committed and working with the Doughnut. The Brussels region, amazing champion for sure. Barcelona, yeah, in Spain for sure. I'm very proud of that as well. And many more. Ipoh in Malaysia, we're starting to see actually how more cities in other parts outside of Europe are also adapting the concept, and it means different things for them as well. And I'll just say that maybe the one commonality that we're seeing in those cities that are perhaps going to a different level of ambition to, really taking this seriously, I think they do need the political will. So that's why we also need, really courageous and pioneering political leaders that are backing up, and that's really key for this to really work.
Thank you. So Grégory, I know when I was researching for this session, I came across a tool that you were implementing called a well-being compass. And I guess that's one of the tools that you're doing to help move everybody together. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
As Carlota said earlier, I mean, even if we are not a purist practitioner of the Doughnut approach, I have to confess that it has been very inspiring, because if earlier I was talking about the necessity, of course, to tackle the issue of climate change and to, at the same time, to reduce our carbon emission and to adapt the city, because, I mean, climate change is already here. You were asking me about heat waves, and I was answering that it's already experienced by people. So we have to do both reduction and adaptation. And at the same time, as a mayor, my ultimate goal, to be honest, is not to fight climate change. I'm sorry to say that here, but I mean, my ultimate goal is the well-being of people, is the well-being of the people of Lyon. So how can I do that? And basically, it's linked with what you call the social dimension of the Doughnut. I have to be able to actually measure the well-being of people, but before that, I have to know what is the definition of well-being for people, because I cannot provide well-being for people without people themselves being aware of what well-being is all about. So I have to ask them. This is what we did, actually. We designed this well-being compass with groups of citizens, asking them, okay, what's important for you? What is your definition, not of success, but of well-being? And so step by step, we designed a tool with 12 different categories. I will not necessarily mention them right now, but with that, we have quite a clear view of people's expectation as far as their well-being is concerned. And this is then used as a tool to see if our public policies are actually going on the appropriate direction. But, if I may add, this is not enough actually to, let's say, to give us quite a clear direction on what we are doing, because this well-being compass is one of the 3 monitoring tools that we are using for our public policies. A second one is a very simple one, which is related with our mandate plan. At the beginning of the mandate, we have explained to people what will be the content of our action plan during the 6 years mandate. More or less, this was just a copy-paste of our program, basically, a political program. And of course, we made commitments, so we need to measure, because we are accountable to the people, we need to measure if actually we are implementing this plan of action, this mandate plan. So we have set up such a tool. And in addition to that, because I told you before that that addressing climate change issue, the climate change issue is actually one of our priority. We also need to measure if our action contributes to this. So we have set up an ecological transition dashboard, which actually measure not the output that we deliver with the action plan, through the implementation of our action, but we actually measure the outcomes of what we are actually doing. So we look at the quality of air, the quality of water, things like this, the number of square meters of let's say, of nature that we were able to actually provide to people in addition to what's existing, for instance.
And we might see some pocket forests popping up in Lyon.
It can be seen already, actually.
Oh, very good, very good. So we're about to run out of time, but I always like to steal the very last question of one of my very favorite podcasts, Outrage and Optimism, which is a question that I think is perfect for our time. So I'm going to start with you, Carlota. What is something that makes you outraged, but what is something that makes you feel optimistic?
That's a powerful question, and I think that I always like to think that, well, what I'm saying is that it's to some extent, even though sometimes it feels slowly, and that might be a bit, it is happening. So, you know, what gives me hope and what makes me optimistic, it's particularly from my experience, it's seeing all the stories of how pioneers are indeed bringing these ideas into practice. And we spoke today a lot about cities, but I'm seeing amazing pioneers in teaching in schools, new economic ideas. I'm seeing students wanting and asking for new economic thinking to be taught in their classrooms. I'm seeing some businesses really trying and starting to think how can they deeply transform. So I think that all of these stories of practice really give me optimism. At Deal, we always say that 21st century economies will be practice first and theorized later. And so I'm very happy that we're trying, because unless we try, we won't make it.
And what about you, Grégory? Something that makes you outraged and something that makes you optimistic?
To be honest, being here is quite is synonymous with being optimistic, because we are here with lots of people willing to go further, willing to change the world and to make it a better world. But if you allow me, let me just share you one of the, let's say, one of the pride actually that I like to share with you today about one thing that we did. Young kids in municipal kindergarten right now in Lyon. So when I say young kids, from 0 to 3 years old, they eat 100% organic food in kindergarten, and 80% of this food comes from local producers.
Wow.
And we started from 0, basically. So that shows how quick changes could happen.
And on that
And as long as, I mean, everybody is mobilized, and I have to tell you that all the civil servants in the city are so enthusiastic about this kind of change, because they see, I mean, very quickly they see how it is beneficial for children. So this is a very simple example, but for me, very, very illustrative of, let's say, how quick we can make change happen.
Well, I can't think of a better way to finish. So thank you very, very much to our panel. Thank you.